Welcome to the Spectrum Lounge podcast, where we discuss creatives of color disrupting the game in TV, film, and pop culture. I am your host, Rebecca Theodore-Vachon, and on this episode, we break down season 4 of the HBO series Insecure with Jerry L. Barrow. Welcome back, Jerry.
Hey, how you doing, Rebecca? Thanks for having me back. What's going
Oh,
on?
good. Hi. So you can do a little plug. You're about to join the podcasting
I
family.
am, I am, and thank you so much. Yes, my new podcast, Fathers Who Bother, will be premiering this Father's Day. It's me interviewing some of my favorite entertainers, singers, rappers, actors, and my friends about their adventures in fatherhood. It's something I've been wanting to do for a really long time. And finally, with everything happening and not happening, because I'm no longer at BT, I had some time to actually work on this. And thanks to people like you who've been giving me pointers on podcasting, still tweaking things here and there,
Of
but
course.
I feel comfortable. It's live on SoundCloud and Spotify, but I'm going to start pushing it out over the next couple of days, and I'm really really happy with the outcome. So thank you and everybody else for your support, and check it out when you can.
Great. Yeah, I'm really excited for you because I know this is I know we've talked about it. I know this is something that you really wanted to do for a while. So, yeah. This is
Yes, follow us on Instagram, Fathers Who Bother, and on Twitter at Fathers Who Be.
it's Fathers Who Be. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So,
it was
okay.
too long for
Too
Twitter.
long. Ah, got it. Got it. So picky. Yeah.
hmm
So yeah, so I thought this would be a good time because the season finale of Insecure aired on Sunday about 2 days ago. And so I thought it would be good for us to just kind of sit down and marinate, sort of on the season finale. Because I always feel the season finale is important, right? Because what it does is it wraps up certain story arcs of that particular season. And then a good season finale, kind of resolves the storylines and then it sets the ground for the next season. So I'm always interested to see. And I've always felt that Insecure, as far as their season finales, have been really good at that. Well, up until recently. Yeah.
Shade,
Oh
shade.
God. I don't know. I mean, you and I, we watch Insecure, pretty much together. We have Marco Polo, so we'll, text each other and send each other video chats as we're watching it, just kind of talking about like the breakdowns of each episode and everything. So, um, I guess so. The question to you will be like, what did you think of season 4? Because season 4, I mean, we had to wait 2 years for it. We didn't get season 4 in 2019 because of prior commitments that Issa Rae has. She has a pop-in movie career. So they had to wait for her to, fulfill those commitments. And so we had to wait like a year, like 2 years to get this. So it's highly anticipated. So overall, what did you think of season 4?
Overall, I liked season 4. This was the highly touted 10 episode season because they've always given us just 8, and everyone was saying, "Oh, we're getting more insecure and we're getting more insecure." And I was lucky enough to watch the first 5 episodes, before it premiered, and I really enjoyed some of the new characters they brought in, like TSA Bay. Um I liked Issa and her growth. Because things left off where we finally saw her unpacking her stuff, literally and figuratively. She got a place, she got a job. Now we're waiting to see what does Issa do with this newfound independence. She's not dealing with Nathan, at least at the beginning. Lawrence wasn't in the picture. Danny wasn't in the picture. It was life without a man. So I was excited to see where this Issa was going. And for the most part, it really delivered. The build up to running her first event was great. And
Mm-hmm.
then, of course, the tumultuous fight with Molly
Mm-hmm.
really set the stage for the second half. For the second half, episode 8 was the MVP for the second half of the season for me. I didn't feel like the rest of it lived up to episode 8, but we'll get into that. But overall, I really liked season 4.
Okay. So let's talk about some of these storylines. So uh when we're welcome back into season 4, we see Issa in her apartment and she's talking to someone on the phone, and basically she says, I don't fuck with Molly anymore. And so the first half of the season is basically a series of flashbacks that is leading up to why Issa and Molly are not friends anymore. So I really like that setup because what it did is there was a certain a certain anticipation
Right,
with
right.
that. And I think the first half of the season, leading up to the block party, um, really did a good job of setting the stage, kind of setting up the conflict between Molly and Issa, because over the past 4 seasons they've gone back and forth. You know what I mean? They've been very spicy with each other, and they've had arguments, but never on the level of season 4. So really, it was building up to this. It was inevitable. Let's say that.
Right.
So I think the writers really did a good job setting that up. Just kind of seeing, much like Issa's relationship with Lawrence, it was just these series of miscommunications and misunderstandings between Molly and Issa, thrown in with a healthy dash of passive aggressiveness,
Hmm.
that kind of led to the breakdown between Molly and Issa. And as I like to say, I'm not team Molly or team Issa. Watching the deterioration of their friendship, I blame both of them. I
Yes.
think both of them are equally responsible for that, and they both need to be held accountable for that. Molly is more assertive and speaks her mind, and Issa is more passive aggressive, which sometimes does not lead to a good mix,
At
whether
all.
in friendships or relationships. But what I liked is it was kind of like watching this really intense tennis game where the ball was volleyed in Issa's court and Molly's court, where one episode someone would do something fucked up, and then the other episode someone else did. You know what I mean? So no one was really like the innocent victim. They were
No,
they
not
were
at all.
yeah, they were both equally, responsible. So let's jump to the block party episode, right?
Hmm.
Because that's where Black Twitter. It was war. It was war. War on camera, war on screen, and war on,
Yeah.
on the Twitter streets. So let's talk about the block party, right? So just some backstory. We know that from season 3, Issa had this idea to do this block party to kind of elevate Black culture with music and food trucks and everything. And so this episode is like the big day. And so finally, all of her hard work, with the help of Condola. Condola is this publicist she befriended from season 3. And so all of that comes into play. And I think this was episode 5, right? Was that episode 5 with the
Yes,
block
that was it.
party? Yeah.
Yep. That was
Yeah.
the
Hmm.
midpoint. Midpoint.
Yeah. Yeah. So we understand that the episode prior to that, Issa needed some help landing a major act. She asked Molly, since your boyfriend Andrew works for Live Nation, can you give me the hookup? Right. And the ending of the episode before that, Molly basically says, you know what? I'm not going to ask Andrew to do that. This relationship is too important to me. And so, yeah, please leave me out of it. Um, and then in episode 5, we understand a conversation that Issa has with Nathan. It seems that she kind of went to Nathan instead, since Nathan and Andrew are best friends, and she reached out to Andrew, or Andrew reached out to her. Or Nathan reached out to her. But basically, Nathan reached out to Andrew and said, "Hey, can you do my girl a solid? Can you help her out?" And so we realized that she did land a major act in the form of Vince Staples. So what were your thoughts on that episode? Just kind of leading to that, like, there were people that said that Issa was wrong for doing that. Other people were saying that Molly was wrong
Yeah.
to set up this boundary. What did you think?
See, this is my thought. I felt like it was really unfair what Molly did, because it's not like Issa had asked Molly to help her find a headliner. She had a headliner, but they dropped out at the last minute. So this was an emergency, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So she wasn't, it wasn't like she was planning the block party and said, I don't know who I'm gonna get for a headliner, and said, oh, let me go ask Molly to hook me up with her, have her man help me out. She had a headliner who I don't think they ever revealed who it was supposed to be, but they dropped out. And then she was on Instagram, she was about to DM Beyonce, and you know, she was Googling local, like, LA rappers. She was just scrambling. So I felt
Mm-hmm.
like, as your friend, Molly should have known that she was in a bad way. But as far Molly has such a diminished view of Issa that she felt like, well, this is par for the course with Issa. Of course, she doesn't have a headliner. Even when Issa went to her, she even made it sound like, well, did you have a contract? She was looking for
Mm-hmm.
something to make it Issa's fault, and as opposed to just helping, which was strike number one. Well, you knew
Right.
something bad was going to happen. So she tells her, so Molly, so Issa, who I think was wrong to just kind of come out and ask Molly for help with something when she had kind of given her the grr about
Mm-hmm.
their Thanksgiving meetup and for the pie. She blew her off. She had other things she wanted to do, but all of a sudden she needed something. She reached out to Molly. So I understood why Molly was upset in that regard. But to just say, oh, I'm trying to protect my relationship with my boyfriend, I'm not going to ask him because you need help. That was just no. This is supposedly your best friend, who she says later on is her reason for even going to the block party, because
Mm-hmm.
Andrew was like, I thought you weren't going to go. And she's like, well, she is my best friend. She was just doing this performative best friend routine without
Yes.
actually being a best friend. And
Mm-hmm.
then things came to things came to a head when she finds out that Issa actually did get the help through Nathan, through Andrew. It was a nice game of telephone, and all it took was an email, and
An
everything had
email.
an email. And I know I've sent plenty of emails are very helpful. It's a very simple thing you could do, but it can help someone out. And what did he have to lose if somehow the event blew up in her face? How would he come back? How would that come back on Andrew? You know what I'm saying?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So Molly's all in her feelings, trying because she knows that she's skating on thin ice with Andrew,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what that was about. If she felt confident in her relationship, she wouldn't have been stressing Issa. But because she knew her relationship was kind of iffy, she didn't want anything potentially ruining it. And just like the old fables, the one thing that you try to avoid is the one thing that comes to be true. They
Mm.
tell the king a baby is going to overthrow you, so you decide you're going to kill all the babies that are born, but that one baby that you didn't get is going to be the one that self-fulfilling prophecy. So I really wasn't feeling Molly, and then she got all in her face and pointing fingers, and it was a really bad situation. She could have handled that so many different ways. And it's what strikes me about Molly is she picks when she wants to be Miss Professional. Every
Mm.
other time she's like, straight laced. I'm a lawyer. I'm a this, da 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 da. But then she decided the ghetto jumped out of her. It's like, wait a minute, time out. You want to pick and choose when you want to be all buttoned up and want to hold Issa to this standard of being not being professional, but here you are at her event showing out. So I was definitely team Issa in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't blameless, but it
Right.
wasn't as bad as what Molly did.
Right. Yeah. Like I said, the writers did a really good job of making them equally culpable and messy in this breakdown of their friendship. And like when the episode started, like you said, the thing that struck me was that, like you said, Molly didn't even want to go to this event. Like, she's in the closet picking these outfits and she's looking highly irritated.
Mhm.
Irritated, like, I don't even want to go to this. And then Andrew's there, he's on his phone and he was like, well, we don't have to go. Being the ever supportive boyfriend that Andrew is, Andrew was like, listen, if you don't want to go to the event, we don't have to go. And then she's like, well, I have to go because, she's my best friend. And that's something you keep seeing her say in a recurrent fashion throughout the season, right? Like leading up to the fight,
Mhm.
where she was like, "Oh, she's my best friend," and like you said, it's a very performative thing. And I'm like, well, who are you trying to convince here? Is it us or you? Like, do you
Right.
really think?
Right.
You know what I mean? So already she had this negative energy. Even before she put her clothes on, she was already like, for me, I really do feel that when you have feel a certain way to you're like projecting negative energy to somebody, it, you know what I mean? Like, I don't need that. Like, Issa definitely didn't need that.
She was in
And
wish mode.
she was in Wish. Like, I really think she wanted this event to fail, because
Right.
then it would be the self. It would. The thing with Molly and Issa is that she needs her to feel in a certain way. Molly needs to feel superior to Issa. You know what I mean? It's this very dysfunctional relationship where it's like, well, I'm the professional Miss Perfect and Issa's the fuck up. And
Right.
really, that's extended to the whole dynamic between Issa, Molly, Kelly, and Tiffany. You know what I
Right.
mean? I do think that the three of them do look at Issa as sort of like the loser of the group in some ways. And I do feel that some of them could have been better friends to Issa in some ways. But yeah, like she was already cranky. She was already cranky. And then, that's when she mentioned that Molly had some sort of case win or whatever. So she had a celebratory dinner, for a case that she won, and she reveals that Issa didn't show up.
Mm.
Now I can understand that, yes. And so Andrew was like, well, why don't you, again, he was like, well, why don't you talk to her about that? And again, this goes back to the passive aggressiveness and the miscommunication. Like, if you saw that she didn't show up for this dinner, I would have texted her. I would have called her the next day, like, what was that about?
Because
You know
some
what I mean?
people like to be mad. Being mad
Right.
is their power,
Right.
so that they don't want to let go. Because if they're happy or if they're content, then they don't
Mm-hmm.
have anything to wield over you. And Molly loves to wield her
Mm-hmm.
discontent like a hammer, especially with Issa, and she did it with Andrew too, and
Mm-hmm.
it backfired. But we'll get to that later.
Yeah. So yeah, so she ends up going to the event. Issa's putting everything together, and we see that the event is actually a huge success. And I was sitting there like, I was so proud of Issa. I was just like,
Mhm.
damn girl, like your first block party and that level of success. I mean, you're lucky if you get 50 people to show up, but it seems like it was easily like a good few hundred people. It
You
was
got a few
very,
hundred people doing the wobble. You won
yes.
the night. You won the night.
You did. And it's like your first time event. You don't, you're not like an A-list celebrity. She really just used her creativity and her resources. And I will say that Tiffany did help her out by, hooking her up with Condola. So I will say that.
Right.
Um, and so I just thought that, as a best friend for Molly, like, you should have been happy for your friend. Like, you know what? I know, because Issa says this later when they have the big argument. She was like, you saw at the last job that I had, you saw how unhappy I was. You know what I mean? And I finally committed to something, and it's a success. And this is why I'm saying, Molly was still a sourpuss, because there's a scene, during the course of this block party where Molly and Andrew are sitting on this couch together, and Molly just like looks around, and she was like, oh, well, I mean, I guess she pulled it off. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
Andrew had to coax that out of her. He
Right.
was like, don't you think that Issa did a good job? And she was like, yeah, you know what I mean? And then she brings something over. I don't know if it was like an ice cream cone or something from a food truck. I guess that was her way of like a peace offering for Issa, but they couldn't really get to talk because Issa had to attend to something, so they really didn't have a chance to in-depth conversation. So everything happens. Vince Staples, appears. He performs. Everybody's happy. It's this great event, and then afterwards, we see Vince Staples' manager. He goes to Andrew. Andrew introduces Molly as his girlfriend.
Mhm.
And then the manager's like, hey, you know what? Vince, he was really happy with this turnout. And, when you get a minute, can you come talk to Vince? Because it sounded like they want to partner with Andrew to do more things. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Right.
And so that's when the manager says, thanks for the hookup.
Right.
And then that's when Molly decides to be Blue's Clues. And it's like, what? You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, what? what hookup? You know what I mean? And then Andrew was like, yeah, Nathan reached out to me. He said that Issa needed a headliner. And Andrew literally said this. I sent an email.
Right.
I sent an email. Right. And this is why, because you and I were both rewatching Insecure today, and just watching that scene over again, I'm like, this woman is so freaking miserable. Like, you're standing next to your man. Number one, he's acknowledging you as his girlfriend in public, right? Which is always like a sign. That's like a checkoff mark for any girl, right? Who's dating, whether a man, woman, whatever. You want to be acknowledged like that. Not, this is my friend, or he was like, this is my girlfriend, Molly, right? So he's claiming her in this relationship. And then he's being complimented. Like, he's like, this manager is saying, hey, this A-list celebrity wants to work with you some more. Would you not be a supportive girlfriend and just be like, oh my God, babe, that's great. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah, go talk to Vince Staples, or better yet, could you introduce me to Vince Staples? Anything, any combination of those things. But no, what she decided to do is she decided to just pinpoint this one little thing about the fact that Andrew helped Issa to get Vince Staples. And that's when she walks over to Issa and pulls her aside. Can I talk to you for a minute? And then that's when she was like, what, you deliberately went behind my back. And I was like, this isn't Dynasty. Like, what are you, Alexis Colby? Like, this isn't Succession. Like, girl, calm down. Like, this was a block party.
Right.
And friends who had friends. But let's be clear. When you work in any kind of industry, right, whether it's entertainment or technology, is it not about the resources and the contacts that you have, right?
Absolutely.
It's not always a meritocracy. It's about one person who knows another person. And you know what I mean? A lot of the most successful people, if you notice, the one thing they'll have in common is that there will be that one person in a higher position that will give them a chance. I made a phone call. I set up a lunch date. We played golf. I like to joke. Some of the biggest deals are made on the golf course. You know what I mean? Or at a cigar bar or whatever. It's not always within the confines of a freaking, boardroom.
And if anyone should understand that, it should be Molly.
Absolutely, because I'm sure somebody was helping her out now that she's, high up at her law firm. I'm sure somebody helped her out, probably, a mentor or whatever. So it was like, why would you? And clearly everything turned out right, because Issa said that. She was like, she copped to it. She was like, yes, I asked Nathan. You told me to keep you out of it. So I asked Nathan. Nathan asked Andrew. And she was like, and Issa was like, well, what's the big deal? I mean, clearly the event is a success, and Andrew is potentially going to get more business off of that. So really, what is the problem?
Because you didn't follow my rules.
And then it becomes this nastiness where she was like, oh, your shady ass was wobbling with me. This is Molly. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Again, on some whatever Dynasty bullshit. And I was just like, oh my God, lady. Like, and then she just blew it up. And then that's when she's, really moved up on Issa. And then that's when she was like, oh, you're a user, you're this, you're that. And then, Issa shoots back, and she was like, if you break up with Andrew, it's not going to be because of me, girl. Mm-hmm. That's going to be on you.
Foreshadowing like a mug. But yes. She hit it on the head.
She hit it on the head. And you know what they say? Hit dogs holler. Mm-hmm. And that's when, Molly basically kind of came up on Issa like she was going to hit her. You know what I mean? Like, she was just like, what you going to do? And then, of course, pandemonium breaks out. Somebody was like, somebody has a gun. And then everybody...
love that Easter egg, the Mary J. Blige Easter egg.
And so, I mean, it was really interesting to see the conversations online after that episode aired, for like, because people were talking about it for at least 2-3 days after it ended. And it clearly became a Issa versus Molly thing. And then, I was seeing comments like, well, that's her man, and you don't have the right to ask her man any favors, and you don't do. And I was like, oh,
she asked to sleep with her man. She asked her man for an email. This was business. This was work. I hate that territorial, possessive nonsense people
I agree.
On Twitter, but that's my man. So that means that you have this fiefdom around your significant other where someone can't email or talk to them because you said so, and that's some bull. I'm sorry.
It was totally bullshit. I mean, as somebody mentioned, Issa wouldn't have, I mean, Molly wouldn't have even met Andrew if it wasn't for her, right? Because remember, Issa knew Nathan, right? And through
Mhm.
Nathan, well, no, they went to Coachella. I'm sorry. Yeah, it was Coachella. Andrew and Nathan were there, and then that's how they. So I was just sort of like,
I
okay,
forgot about that. You're right.
yeah,
That's
they
true.
yeah, they met at Coachella. So it was just sort of like, what are you talking about? Like, that's not, that doesn't even, so I don't even like this whole possessiveness of, oh, that's my man. And I'm like, yeah, grow up. Let's come back in another 20 years. Let's have an adult conversation about that. And so it was just all these things about like the ones that were on Team Molly, they were just like, oh, boundaries. And I'm like, Molly is the last one to be talking about boundaries, okay?
Right.
Because let's rewind to season 3 when
Mhm.
Nathan, we
Showed up on
understand,
Easter's birthday. Yes.
yes,
Talk
and
about it. Talk about it.
okay, and then you told this man bounce. Okay, he was there, contrite, ready to apologize to Issa, and you interceded and you told this man, you're and I'm gonna be honest here. I think Molly is a snob. And I think she looks down on Nathan. I think there's this whole like, oh, you're a barber. I think there was
Mm,
definitely a feeling of she didn't feel that Nathan was good enough for Issa, right? Like, girl, mind your business. Like, it's not your place to tell this man, unless he physically harmed Issa or he was like a danger to her. You needed to have her be an adult and make her make the decision whether she
exactly.
wanted.
At the
No,
very least, she could have gone back in the house and said, "Listen, Nathan's outside. Do you want me to
right.
send him away, or do you want me to? Do you
Exactly.
want to go out and talk to him?" The choice should have been Issa's. It should not have been hers to make in that instance. So yeah, she is really the last to talk about boundaries,
Boundaries. I was
especially
like,
in her own relationship. The boundary between work and playtime was completely blurred, as we saw that night when she had the poor man waiting up for her in the bed. She said, "I'll be there in a second." And then
it was
two,
like 9 o'clock, and then it was like
yeah,
one
it was
o'clock in
like
the
the
morning.
SpongeBob 3 hours later. Dude sleeping in bed, and then you want to crawl in talking about, "Oh, I'm ready." It's like, come on, you don't know the first thing about boundaries, so you need to stop.
Yeah. So so then because of that fight, they don't speak to each other for at least a good 2, 3 episodes. And then we have a standalone episode with Issa, Life Without Molly. And then we have a standalone episode of Molly with Andrew. So I did want to talk about Molly and Andrew.
Hmm.
He was introduced in the last season. He was
Shout out to
presented
Alex Hodge.
Alexander. I want him to be for selfish reasons. I hope they didn't break up because I like Alex very much. He's a friend of the Spectrum Lounge, and
Right, right.
I love the energy and the swag that he brings to Insecure. But Molly's just a mess. But I was like, girl, nobody deserves that.
That's
You know
the
what I
way I
mean?
feel about, I love Jay Ellis and Lawrence Hive to the day,
Mm,
but even I was like, they need to not be together right now. This is not a time for them. But go ahead.
right. Well, we'll talk about Issa and Molly's arc, and then we'll go to Molly and Andrew and then Issa and Andrew. I'm sorry, Issa and Lawrence. So the fight breaks out. They don't talk to each other for at least 2, 3 episodes or whatever, and then they finally reunite. I'm gonna say, and I say this in air quotes. In episode 9, they decide to meet at this diner, and it is
Right.
the most fakest of meetings. They don't even mention the fight, not even once.
Not once. That was a fail. That was
Yeah.
like, how do you have that meeting and not say, listen, about the other night? You just tiptoe around that whole shit.
Yes.
No. Mm-mm.
Yes. And I also want to point out that Issa's the one that reached out to Molly, even though I said no. I was very much against that. I was just like, because like for you with that big fight they had I was Team Issa for that. I was like, yeah, Issa's definitely fucked up and she can own her shit. But for you to bring this drama to my place of work,
Mhm.
oh, that's a no. Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Right.
If you had it now, let's say Molly did have issues with the fact that Issa reached out, you could hug her goodbye. You could be like, girl, this was a great event. We need to talk. Let me talk to you tomorrow. Like she could have, invited her for brunch and just been like, can we talk about the fact that you reached out to, like, this could have been, if they had decided she decided to use her adult words, if she decided to be a grown up,
Right.
there's a way that you could have talked to Issa about that, but not popping off. Like, keep that shit on the playground. That was literally like some childish shit. And I just was not feeling Molly. I was like, goodbye, girl. And so, yeah, so they don't talk for a couple of episodes. They meet at this diner. And the thing that irritated me is that Issa reached out to Molly. Now, I'm going to say this. Issa reaching out to Molly did have some ulterior motives, right? Because she was contemplating reuniting with Lawrence. She needed to talk to somebody. That's how I felt as to why she reached out to Molly. And I was like, that's a little selfish, but okay.
Yep.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So you got to hold her accountable for that.
The second time she did that, yep.
Second time she did that. But we also need to talk about the fact that Molly really didn't want to go. Again, we see this conversation with Andrew, and she was like, yeah, whatever. Like, she comes back from the brunch and she was just like, she really wasn't even feeling it. I'm like, why did you even show up? Like, why did you even go? You know what I mean? Because I think Andrew said something to her, and then she was like, well, the only thing I care about is watching this, Latoya, Missing Latoya, or whatever, that reality show that they were watching throughout the season. She didn't care. Like, it seemed to me like she really didn't care. Later in that episode, in episode 9, Issa's helping Nathan move.
Mm-hmm.
Molly and Andrew are there. Andrew kind of nudges Molly as to, try to make up with her, try to,
Right.
and Molly's like, well, we have all this food. And I'd like to point out that the food that Molly got is not the food that Andrew asked for, right?
Oh, I missed that.
I'll tell you why. Because she comes back with the food. I think she got Thai or something else. And then Andrew was like, I thought you said we were getting Indian. And she was like, oh, no, I was going to get it. But then I remembered that the naan bread was nah or something like that. And then Andrew just had a look on his face. And it was just like,
well, I wanted Indian, damn it.
Yes, at least you could text me and ask me, okay, you could have just said, I didn't like the food at the Indian restaurant. Can we get something else? But you made that executive decision.
Right.
And didn't even ask him. But never mind. Usual Molly shenanigans. So they end up staying. The four of them are, having wine and they're drinking. And you could kind of see like there's still like this fakeness between Molly and Issa. And then Molly, Andrew goes to go get some wine. And then Molly Issa gets a text from Molly. The text was
misfire.
Yes, it was the misfire text. Lord, listen, I had one last night.
Really?
Yes, I did. And let me tell you, it was it was a personal feminine thing that I meant to send to my boyfriend.
Oh, wow.
Because I was trying to be flirty with him, and I sent it to Erica.
Oh no.
Shout out to Erica. And this is how I know that we're friends, because Erica she read it. She was like, oh my God, girl, are you okay? I mean, it's not an STD or nothing serious like that. But she was just like, hey girl, are you okay? And I'm like, girl, I'm so sorry. I meant to send that to my boyfriend. You got it. And she just laughed and we moved on because we were talking about movies. So that's karma for me. I understand the mistext. So
oh yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, Molly sent it. Yes. Yeah, Molly sent the text where she was like, well, can't you see I'm trying with her? That was meant for Andrew, but then she sends it to Issa instead.
Oof. Not only did she send it to the wrong person, she sent it to the person she was talking about.
Like, girl. She probably had Issa on the brain.
Right.
And probably just pulled up Issa or whatever, and then just didn't even look. And I was like, see, that's what you get. And then Issa's feelings are hurt. She decides to, cut the evening early to leave. And then Molly and Issa have this conversation outside. And then, they're just sort of like, Molly's like, well, I think maybe we're just two different people and maybe we just moved apart. And then Issa was like, okay. And she goes into her lift and
she was done.
And she was done. And I was just looking at Molly. I was like, wow, like, you are just a colossal fuck up. Like, I don't understand how you keep doing all of this. But all to say, the season finale. So we're going to get to the season finale, right? Mm-hmm. Molly and Issa still aren't talking. And then that's when we get this Tiffany who we were getting hints of that she had some sort of postpartum depression after having the baby, has disappeared. She's been gone for like, almost 24 hours or whatever. And so the gang, you know, gets over to Derek's house and decides to help him to find Tiffany. And they basically use this disappearance of Tiffany to fast track this reunion between Issa and Molly. So
Right.
I just want to say I fucking hated it. And I say fucking hate. I was just sitting there like, are y'all really, really doing this to us right now? Because I'm going to tell you something. From that episode when they were showing that Tiffany was having the postpartum depression, I knew it, Jerry. I was like, oh, they're going to use this to get Issa and Molly together. And this was from episode 3 or 4. I already called it. And it's what, telegraphing. And I was just like, oh, come on, guys. This is too easy. This is too easy. No, 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 no. And so, yeah, they go looking for Tiffany. And that's when Issa and Molly are just, I guess it serves as a metaphor as to they're missing, their friendship is missing, and you should appreciate people while they blah, 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 blah. And I was just sitting there like, this is some bullshit. I wasn't here for it. Yes, because the last scene is seeing them, in a restaurant. It seems that Molly's the one who asked Issa to come, and I just didn't like it for several reasons. I'll let you give your reasons right now. But first off, I didn't like it because it wasn't earned. And that's the thing with good storytelling. Like I said, the first half of the season, by the time Issa and Molly have that big blow up, it didn't feel like it came out of nowhere. We were totally expecting, not in a, oh, this is bored, this is lazy hand, but it was like, no, this is the trajectory of their friendship and their dysfunction of their friendship. So of course, this is where they're going to land. But the writers laid out a path for that. You know what I mean? Again, with the passive aggressiveness and the missed calls and the this and the that. So that made sense. Them deciding to be friends together, it was really still in this place of toxicity and codependency, because that's what I feel that their friendship is. It's a very toxic, codependent friendship. Because Molly only called Issa when she broke up with Andrew. Well, actually, when Andrew dumped her, or at least that's what I'm thinking. Andrew.
That's the presumption. That's the way they led it to believe.
Yeah.
Same thing with, Issa and Lawrence, that she broke up with him. Even though technically, I'll say we never technically see them jump off. It's like those movies where they show the car jumping off the cliff, but you never see it land.
Absolutely.
So they're leaving it open to what could happen next season. But the spirit of everything is that both of them have lost their men. Yeah.
Yeah. Or it's oh my, I'm hurt. Right. Because what's interesting is, and you said this earlier, it was like she made Andrew such a priority. Like I'm trying to protect my relationship and I XYZ, and now you ain't got no man. And that, or at least he's ready to leave. And now you want to reach out to Issa. And I was like, I hate that. I hate it so much. Like, I was just like, I was really interested in having them have a significant amount of time without them in each other's life. If that took a season or half of the next season, I was totally fine with that.
Yeah.
Because they both, yeah. Go ahead.
It definitely felt rushed to me, just given how much time was given to the build up and then the final explosion.
Yes.
The wrap up was just like, come on, guys. Like, and the fact that they spent like 10 minutes of this episode looking for Tiffany for it to end up with her saying 10 words. 10 words. I'm sorry. I just didn't know what else to do. That was it. That's all we got after that wild goose chase with Tiffany. They could have really used that time to actually have a real dialogue between Issa and Molly, where they air shit out in the same way Lawrence and Issa got to do in episode 8. Right. But I guess now they're going to make us wait until next season to see what the conversation was. But the payoff for me as a viewer would have been to hear them tell each other the hard things. That hear them say have the tough conversation about, and with Lawrence, it was why
Daniel?
Issa could have been like, well, why were you ready to let me fail? Like why? And then Molly could have been like, why didn't you show up for Thanksgiving pie? Why did you blow me off all those times? When we were supposed to go to the con? Like everything that wasn't said, because the big takeaway from Issa and Lawrence was that we weren't talking. Just like,
Yep.
damn, we weren't talking, were we? And that was the key problem with Issa and Molly, is that they were not talking to each other. It was always
Absolutely.
text. It was like, oh, well, okay, girl, do you. Which we all know, do you is the kiss off of death from coming from anybody. When they tell you do you, it's basically go play in traffic. So,
It's fine. It's fine. Fine.
right.
You know, as a boyfriend, when you ask your girl and she writes back fine, you know it's not fine.
Fine, do you are in the pantheon of horrible things to read on your phone.
Mhm. I'll also,
And we
and
need to
I'll,
talk. And
yeah,
we
we
need
need
to
to
talk.
talk. Or not even okay, just the K. That's when you know you're in some shit. And
I know.
as a woman, that's something, even now I'm still working on using my adult words. You know what I mean? Like I've slipped a couple of times, you know what I mean, with my, and he'll just be like, he'll just call me back. He's like, okay, we're not gonna do this, are we? And I was like, all right. He's like, let's use our adult words here. And I was like, okay, what I meant
Right.
to say is, this is what I wanted. I was hoping we were gonna do that. And usually 10 times out of 10, once we have that conversation, things are back on track. Like if closed mouths don't get fed,
Right.
you know what I mean? This whole idea of he's supposed to know, or my best friend is supposed to be able to read my mind, or my man is supposed to read my mind, or my woman. This is BS. There's no such thing as ESP, okay? The psychic ability, that's the X-Men, that's in the comic books, okay? That there's no such thing. You
What the fuck,
have to,
Charles?
yeah, you have to express what it is you want. And
Right.
that was the constant problem with Issa and Molly, is that it was just all these nasty resentments that have, because they've been friends since college, right? I mean, Molly could be mad at something that Issa did from like 7 years ago. Like, girl, you borrowed my dress, you never brought it back. I don't know. You know how Molly
Well,
is. Like,
that's the thing with long relationships. A lot of times,
mm-hmm.
it's not what's happening in the moment; it's what's built up over the years.
Right.
It's this is what we've seen with Esam. To me, it was like a bad marriage. It's like all this
Very
stuff has
bad.
been building up, and you're not even speaking to what's happening in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
It's it probably was about the dress she borrowed, or the guy
Mm-hmm.
whose phone number she forgot to pass to her, or something crazy that is
Right.
just. We're seeing it's the iceberg. We're
Yeah.
seeing the tip of the iceberg, and there's just years and years of stuff underneath the surface that
Mm-hmm.
they're reacting to.
Right. And I had said this a couple of episodes ago, because there were people that were really distressed over Molly and Issa's deterioration, like the friendship falling apart. And they're like, Black women. I'm like, yes, but Black women don't, there are a lot of Black women who don't like each other. I was like, can we stop with this fake sisterhood? Okay.
It's
There are,
real. Their
it's real.
deterioration was so real because I've
Mm-hmm.
observed it, I've experienced it,
Yeah.
and the people that you know the longest, there's this assumption with people
Mm-hmm.
that you've known the longest. There's this really bad assumption that you should just know what I'm thinking. And this goes for platonic and romantic relationships. There's this assumption that because we've known each other, been friends for this long, you should just know, and then you get resentful when the person doesn't know or they don't react in the way that you think that they should react,
Yeah.
and not understanding that people change over time. The person that you were friends with in college 5 years ago or 10 years ago is not the same person now,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and but you still you don't want to acknowledge their growth, but you still also want to hold them accountable for who they were 10 years ago. And that's exactly what they both were doing to each other, more so Molly to Issa, but
Mm.
they were both guilty of kind of keeping them in this box. She referred to her as the old Molly, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the old Issa. They were constantly bringing up the old Molly and old Issa because those were the versions of them that they were familiar with and hence comfortable with,
Right.
despite being upset with them. Those are the versions of them that they could react to, in some cases maybe even manipulate, because it's too much work to
Mm-hmm.
learn who the new one is.
And I think, speaking on Molly's side, I think um I felt that she wasn't comfortable with Issa finally being successful. I don't
At
think
all.
she couldn't handle it. She was like, "Oh, she's actually good at what she does, and she's pursuing." I do feel like there was a certain amount of jealousy. In the fact, I mean, does Molly even like being a lawyer? I don't know. I mean, I know it affords her a really beautiful condo and clothes and vacations, but does she actually like her job? I don't know. I mean, I know a lot of corporate lawyers, and a lot of them hate their jobs. I've
Mhm.
worked in law firms, and the hours that they work, especially, it's you have to. produce. It's about billable hours, right?
Right.
And that will stress out any first or second year associate. I mean, if you make it as far as Molly, God bless her. You know what I mean? But the question is, does she even really want to be a lawyer? That's something they might want to explore in
But
season 5.
law is
Mm-hmm.
one of those professions that masquerades as a personality. To be
Mm.
able to say that you're a lawyer all of a sudden just projects who you are, right?
Right,
You don't
right.
have to do the work of showing people that you're actually interesting or have something to contribute. I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor, I'm a this,
Mm-hmm,
as
mm-hmm.
opposed to the
They think it's a personality trait.
yes, the polar and the polar opposite is Issa, who has
Yeah.
created this thing out of air that has no title, no
Mm-hmm.
description, no nothing, but it's tangible to her and to the
Yeah.
people that it impacted. But even she doesn't know what to call it, you
Didn't she
know?
say, was that one episode she said a cultural curator?
Yes, yes,
Which
and I love
I
that.
actually like. Some
You
people make
know,
fun of it, but I was like, that is what she's doing when you look
yeah.
at her events. But yeah, it's like, but the thing with Molly is that I know that she got a lot of hate. There was even there was even one interview where Prentice Penny had to go to bat for Molly because people were just like Molly would constantly be like, trending. You know what I mean? Like almost
Right.
every episode, like, oh Molly, oh Molly. You know what I mean? And it was like, for me, the thing with Molly is that I actually have a very soft spot for her because she reminds me of myself. In
Mm.
my the 20s Rebecca, in the fact that she has these self-destructive tendencies, right? Like in the case of Andrew, you finally had this functional relationship with this man who was clearly crazy about you because the things that she got away with, I was like,
Mm.
well, one, the pussy had to be bomb. I mean, clearly, we saw in the Mexico trip, but also, he really cared for her, and I think he was in love with her because I don't know too much men that would put up with that nonsense. But the thing is, like, she just has this way of just sabotaging things, like just even in a non-romantic way, like just even the way that she tried to mess up Issa's evening with the block party. I think that was sabotage.
Mm.
That was sabotage. It was a sabotage in the way of, let me fuck up this friendship and let me fuck up her event, because it was, the energy that she brought was totally not necessary. Again, that's a conversation you could have had with Issa. Let her, have her celebratory night. Let her have a win. But it was really her just literally taking a shit on Issa's success. You know what I mean? And so it's like, and like the therapist said, towards the later episodes, she was like, you build a wall. You get, if someone steps out of a boundary or they don't do what you like, you cut them off. You know what I mean? Now, I will say, in the case of Victor, Andrew's brother, that was deserved. I was
Oh, yeah,
like,
he was an
anybody else?
asshole.
Oh yeah,
He was an
yeah.
asshole.
Victor. I was just like, that
That
one
was
was.
the one thing I disagree with Andrew with, was like pushing for that relationship to be repaired. Like, bruh,
Mhm. Yeah.
your brother was out of line somewhere
Mhm.
down the line. When their cooler heads prevail, they'll talk. But the whole come to the basketball game thing, it's too much. Even though the thing that's always disconcerting for me a little bit with the show is we don't know how much time has passed between the things that happened. So I don't know if it was just a couple days. I don't know if it was a couple weeks.
That's a
It was
good point.
a month
Yeah.
later. We don't know how
Mhm.
much time passed. So maybe he felt like, okay, you should get over it, but we don't know how long it's been.
Right.
But a sibling should not be a deal breaker in a relationship, and he should have fell back a little bit on that. But to your point,
Can we discuss that? Because that was something
oh
we talked
yeah,
about last week. I mean, you've been married
oh
for
yeah.
20 years and
Listen,
having other, yeah, like, is it necessary? I mean, you can be respectful to them.
it's a cherry on top, if your
Mhm.
siblings get along with your significant other, with your spouse, but it's not requisite for me because you don't live with me. We'll be cordial. I'm the king of cordial. If I don't
Mhm.
like you, if I don't mess with you, there are people that I have to, associate with for either professional reasons or other reasons. I don't like you as a person. I know how to smile and wave like the penguins of Madagascar and keep it moving. But that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that my relationship is, even with my friendships, like, I've had friends who their siblings have done things and I'm just like, You know,
Stories.
yeah, so I'm just like, but you know what? That's your sibling. You got to live with them. I don't have to
Right.
like them. I'm not going to talk smack about them because that's still your sibling. But
Right.
that's just been my thing from since I don't know where I got this. But when people come to me complaining about whoever, I don't join in because sooner or later they
Reconcile.
reconcile with that person and then they remember
Hmm.
that you were talking smack about that person. So I
You
just
told you told me my boyfriend wasn't shit. I mean,
right,
well, he wasn't.
exactly.
I
But
mean,
that's for them to say, not for you to, not for me to say. So, but
yeah.
the thing is, Molly never. It never occurred to her, and I know we're talking about this is a character. It never occurred to her that how she treated Issa could have been being observed by Andrew, and that Andrew would internalize that. It never occurred to her that by dissing her best
Yes.
friend, that it would occur to her boyfriend that maybe this is the type of person I want to be with. If she's
Mm.
willing to leave her friend out to dry like this,
Hmm.
what's going to happen if she's upset with me? Like, what kind of thin ice am I skating on? Maybe, and
Right.
people like Molly never think like that. Like, oh, because he even said, I didn't think you'd be mad at me for helping your best friend.
Yeah.
So it never occurred to her that that was
Mm.
by putting up this wall and keeping him away from her, he was looking at her like, dude, you're wilding, you
Yeah.
know? And that could have been one of the not to say the only thing. Clearly, it was how she was treating him was more important, but that doesn't help. You
Hmm.
know, like when you're in a relationship, you look and see how your significant other treats other people in their life, how they
Hmm.
get along with their parents, how they get along with their siblings, how they get along with, you know, how they treat other people and their close friends, because relationships are voluntary. The
Yep.
only difference between Andrew and Molly and Andrew and Molly and Issa is Molly and Andrew's sexual attraction, you know. But how
What
you
defines a relationship? Sex.
exactly? So they're actually so that's the huge difference.
Yeah.
However, you know the way people interact with folks outside of sex, it
Hmm.
speaks it says something. How you communicate or don't communicate, people tend to be consistent in both arenas. You know what I'm saying? I don't know anybody who's really open in a relationship and is closed off with their personal friends, you know, or vice versa. How
Right.
you are with your friends is how you are in a relationship for the most part, is what I've observed.
Yeah.
And Andrew was probably looking at her wilding out with Issa and it was like, and then she's doing this to me on top of that. I might
Yeah.
need, and now my brother. So now we're seeing the
Because
straw.
I think I do feel that while I didn't feel that Andrew needed to push Victor so hard. I feel like he should have laid back. But I agree with you. I think he was observing because Victor is kind of like an avatar for himself. Like already Issa, I
Mm.
agree with you. He was already like, that's your girl from like college and you're treating her like that. And
And
so I
he
think,
said that too. Remember in the
yeah.
pool scene with the towel lady, she
Hmm.
blew, and she said something about Asian people, and he was like, "But what about me?" So he's
Yup.
immediately looking at himself, like looking at her and how she's seeing him.
Hmm. Yeah, because I think she said something to the effect of Asian people only consider themselves like people of color when it's convenient or something like that. And I was like, oh,
Right,
Molly. Now that and that
right.
was I did like that was a rough conversation to have, and
Hmm.
I do appreciate that they did touch on because usually the racism is binary of like black and white, right?
Right, right.
But what happens when you have two minorities like black and Asian people? There's a long storied history. Like
Yep.
I feel like the relationship between the black community and the Asian American community is it's complicated, right? Complicated in the fact of the American, that Americans propped Asian Americans to be the model minority. Like, oh,
Yeah.
look at these lazy Negroes, but look at
Right.
these, Asian people. They came here and look what they did. And it's like, okay, but you're only telling half the story. And Asian people did not immigrate here with a history of like 400 years of slavery and oppression. So what are you saying? But that's not to say that Asian people do not experience
Racism.
racism,
Yep.
right? We're seeing this with COVID, right? Like Asian people,
Hmm.
like I live in a mostly Asian populated community. And when the quarantine hit, there's this Asian supermarket that I usually go to. It was empty, Jerry. I could go any time
Hmm.
of the day and there would be like no more than like 10 or 20 people because people were terrified. Non-Asian people refused to shop there.
My favorite
because
Chinese restaurant closed.
yeah, and all the Chinese store close, and some of these some of these restaurants will never recover from that. You know what I mean? So and some of the people that were racist, or I should say bigoted towards Asian people, are black people. Like, black people can't sit there and act like they don't say like some wild shit about Asian people, and Asian people don't say
Mhm.
anti-black thing. Like, it goes both ways, and I think that I appreciate that the scene showed that Victor said some wild shit, and Molly said some sideways shit too. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? Like, because Andrew was like, "Come on, girl, you know that come on, I'm an Asian American man. You don't think that I don't face?" Because I'm sure he and Molly have had conversations. I mean, and Alexander himself, the actor himself, has been was on the Spectrum Lounge and shared the experiences that he had growing up as a Asian mixed race child in Australia. You know what I mean? And like, people making fun of his mother. So I would think that Andrew probably has a similar experience. But yeah, I think Andrew was just observant. Like, the thing I liked about his character is when he talks, he maximizes his words. He's not somebody who talks a lot, but when he does, it's for maximum impact. You know what I'm saying?
right, right.
And especially with someone like Molly, who's a lawyer, you know what I mean? Because when you're talking to lawyers, they'll argue you out of anything.
Yep,
So Andrew had to be very specific about what he said and his intent. And so watching her treat Issa the way he did, and you constantly saw Andrew trying to intercede on Issa's behalf, and Molly would keep shutting him down. So that, and then treating her, not wanting to reconcile or at least try to talk to his brother. I think he was just sort of like, well, how long is it going to be before you cut me out?
exactly.
That's where Andrew's mind was like,
Mhm.
okay, so eventually that shit is going to circle back to me. And yeah, so the final
Especially with
episode.
someone who creates rules on the fly that you can't predict.
It's arbitrary. It's like, what am I gonna wake up to this morning? You know what I
Exactly.
mean? And so it was unfortunate, and I really was rooting for Molly and Andrew, but like I said, Molly is a saboteur to her own
Mhm,
life, and it's
mhm.
so, and that's why while she frustrates me and I want to smack her upside her head sometimes, I recognize those self-destructive tendencies, and I'm hoping that with the therapy that she is seeking, that she will learn to control that, because she definitely has anger issues. Because she just be going from 1 to 10 in like 2 seconds. Like, girl, it's really not that serious. You know what I mean?
Right.
Sometimes it's justified. Like with the towel lady in the Mexico trip, I was like, yeah, I would have been pissed too. There was definitely some anti-blackness there. I'm not going to falter for that. But
Mhm.
her personal relationship, her interpersonal relationships, I do feel that Molly needs to not want to blow shit up all the time, where it's like all or nothing, right? Because we have a mutual friend of ours, and she always said that to me. She was like, she used to nickname me Burn Your Bridges. That's what she nicknamed me, because she was like, Rebecca, she was like,
Oh, I
when
can
she
see that.
yeah, she was like, you're a Virgo to the T. She was like, when people, because I'm a very patient person, the way Virgos are is that they give you enough rope for you to hang yourself. They won't say anything. They're cool. They'll, we're very nice people. And then when we're fed up with you, we are fed the fuck up, and then we're done. And that's it.
Right.
You know what I mean? But still, yeah, my friend would be like, yeah, you're just extreme. Like, you're just like block, delete, mute. You know what I mean? And that's something that I'm still working on, where it's just sort of like, okay, but what am I really upset about? Or what, you know what I mean? And so sometimes it takes like that self-reflection. So I'm hoping that Molly will do better. I do feel that Andrew is a good partner for her, but I don't feel that she's ready emotionally for him. And you and I were having a conversation about this earlier. And one of the reasons I didn't like the season finale is because we'll go to episode 8. For us, episode 8 was the cherry on top.
Mhm.
Episodes 9 and 10. Well, let's talk about episode 10. It really felt like up to episode 8, like two of these characters were making progress, right?
Mhm.
Issa finally having that sit down with Lawrence, and spending that really beautiful evening together, written by the super talented Natasha Rothwell. I love episode 8. It was just like this whimsical rom-com, and it was just, and that was something that was earned. That was
Yeah.
earned. That was something that was earned for the two of them and the journey that they had taken apart after they broke up in season 1. And I was happy for Issa because she finally, not only did they forgive each other, but they learned to forgive themselves in that episode. And I think that was
Mm.
especially important for Issa because I felt that what she did after what happened with Lawrence, it was almost like she felt like she didn't deserve anything. Like she didn't
Right.
deserve anything good in her life. And so for these good things to finally be manifesting in her life in season 4, it was just like, no, I am worthy. I deserve these things. I deserve to be happy. I deserve to be successful. And so to finally sit down with Lawrence and to get that forgiveness from him and the night that they spent together, I think that was very cathartic. It was very cathartic. It was closure for the both of them. And you and I said this. Season 4 really should have ended with episode 8.
Yeah.
Episode 9 and 10 were totally unnecessary.
Right.
I
All
said
it
it.
did, it didn't. It closed up the Issa and Molly loop, and it kind of set up the Molly and Andrew loop. But if you didn't have 9 and 10, would you really been losing anything? Not really. This is the thing. If you ended the season on 8, and I know they made a big thing about it being 10 episodes, but if it ended on 8, what would we really would have lost? You could have started season 5 right from there and been
Agree.
great
With a
and
time
been
jump,
great
maybe like a few
because
months,
it
6
really
months or
felt
a
like,
year. Yeah.
yeah, it really felt like episode 9 undid everything of episode 8,
Thank
specifically
you.
with Issa's growth. Because what was beautiful about 8 is that they were both, he said no more eggshells. They put everything on the line. There was no gotcha to pop up later. You know, even to the point of her saying, "Listen, I know you're supposed to go meet with Condola later, but I want to stay." And that
Yes.
was just putting yourself out there is not easy. And Lawrence seeing that and being like, you know what, bunk it. I'll talk to Condola later. But it should have ended. Even the way they got up the next morning, he was like, "Do you want to ride?" She was like, "Nope, I'm a walk." That was just a real cleansing. That was like, the wasabi or the ginger when you have the sushi. It was like everything was
Yes.
cleansing, you know.
And that shot of her just walking through the neighborhood, because I interviewed Natasha Rothwell, and she was saying that if when you watch Issa's walk home, you're seeing the gentrification or the changes of this neighborhood, which was a reflection of the changes going on with her. Right. So the
Oh,
change on
wow.
the outside and the change going on with her, and just seeing her, like that last shot of her on the top of that hill and the sun is coming down. She's wearing that beautiful blue sweatshirt. That
It
was
was like the limo
perfect.
ride, and it was like the limo ride in Widows, but
Yes.
beautiful.
Beautiful. Yeah.
But
That's
uplifting, but being
yes.
positive, So instead
Right.
of showing the gruesome downtrodden, how from one neighborhood to the next, how things go from poor to rich, you saw it kind of in reverse with Issa. And that would have been a beautiful way to end the season. But now, next season, they're back together. I'm Lawrence, like I said, I'm Lawrence High, but dude, you just broke up with Condola. What are you doing hooking up with your ex like this? You got a job pending 4 hours away.
Thank
Because they tried to
you.
clean it up saying, it's 45-minute flight. That's a 4 or 5 hour drive to Frisco. Okay. And I get some relationships can deal with long distance, but you just got out of one. And this is your ex of 5 years who is just getting her shit together. Y'all did not need to make this no permanent thing the
You
way they
don't.
did.
Because I mean, here's the thing. We're at the big age. We're in our 40s, right?
Right.
Usually the love of your life in your 20s does not end up being your mate. Right. I had 2 serious relationships in my 20s. I didn't end up with either of them. You know what I mean? And that's fine. You know what I mean? I had my first love, the guy that I lost my virginity to. And then I had, we were together 3 years, but that ended badly. And then, I had my second boyfriend towards my late 20s. That didn't end up, and, he went on to get married. He's happily married, has 2 children or whatever. And the 20s for me is like, I'm not knocking anybody who gets married in their 20s. If you marry your high school, there's nothing wrong with that. What I'm saying is, it isn't necessary for Issa and Lawrence to be together. You could, there's a term that they use in the polyamory community, and it's called a comment, right? like in astronomy, a comet is someone, is this special person that you have a connection to. It could be an ex, it could be, you know, a childhood friend, someone that you have like this very close, intimate relationship with, but it is not within the traditional confines of a monogamous relationship. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, it could be like, let's say you're someone who goes to the West Coast, and there's this one special person whenever you go to the West Coast, you know, you guys have dinner, and, you know, you guys spend really good quality time together, and you get on your plane and you come back. You know what I mean? And then and then it's like, I'll see you again 3 months, 4 months, a year. And whatever time you have together with each other, it's special. And there's no expectation on that person. And that's how I see Lawrence and Issa. They can be each other's comments. I'm not against them hooking up, you know, or being together, like, oh, I have a trip to San Francisco, you know, I wanted to come see you or whatever. But I agree with you. Like, it just sounded, it was just the way that episode 8 ended. It was like, it felt counterproductive when we see episode 9. Now they're together trying to make a go of it. Why are you trying to revive a relationship with this man who's potentially going to San Francisco? It doesn't make any
Made no
sense.
sense. No sense.
None. And then when she asked about Condola, it was like this very throwaway, like, oh yeah, we talked and it's over. Really?
Well, I knew that
Really?
was too clean. I was like,
Oh, come on.
that was too clean. We knew that was coming back. We
Yeah.
knew she was going to come back either pregnant or
Hmm.
something.
The
We
way she
knew
was
that we
blowing up his phone in episode 8,
what?
yes. And which is fine, because you could have brought that into season 5.
Right.
But yeah, it was just sort of like episode 9 was just and then episode 10, I listen, and we'll talk about this. One of the reasons why I really dislike episode 10 is that there's this trope or this idea that, and I'm going to speak specifically for Black women, that there's this punishment that, how dare you as a Black woman dare to be successful in your career? And it becomes this idea of, you're either have the career, you can have romance, but you can't have both.
Right.
And
Right.
I just categorically disagree with that. I disagree with that. And it almost felt like, I'm going to be real, the way that episode 10 was written, it felt like some Tyler Perry fanfic. Like, it was literally like,
Wow.
let's punish these Black women who dare to be successful and dare to be, you know what I mean? Like, here, Molly, you're a successful lawyer. Here, you're gonna get another fucked up relationship. And here's Issa, you know, on the cusp of having this really successful career doing these events. Oh,
Wow.
now you went to Lawrence. Oh, we're gonna fuck you up by having a baby. And I'm like, oh, come
Wow.
on.
The baby is
Really?
definitely straight out of the Tyler Perry playbook. That's the Chitlin
Yes.
Circle playbook, which is why everybody predicted it. Like, oh yeah, he
Thank
just broke up
you.
with his ex. Oh yeah, she's
Which
pregnant.
storyline? Somebody was comparing it to another show that had done that. I'm trying to remember what it was, where the boyfriend ended up knocking up an ex-girlfriend when he was trying to be.
Someone superimposed Jay Ellis's face on the Usher Confessions album, and I'm
Oh
dying.
my gosh.
Just because that's
Yeah.
basically the whole thing. That's on everything.
Yeah.
Put that on everything. What?
It was crazy. I was just sitting
Yeah.
there like, what are y'all doing? Like, after everything that you did to build up Issa and Lawrence in episode 8, and it's like you said, I felt like season 9 and 10 just undid everything. I'm like, and it's this idea of, you can manufacture drama without punishing your female characters, and specifically your Black female characters. It bugs me so much. It's like, listen, at the end of the day, we're all human beings, okay? And I used to drink that Kool-Aid about, well, it's my career and I don't need no man and I don't need whatever, whatever. And it's like, okay, now let me be clear. However you manifest your relationships, whether it's monogamous, polyamorous, or however it is, please, please get away with this. We're human beings. We are human beings. And at the end of the day, everybody wants to be loved. Everybody wants to be intimate. You need some sort of intimate connection with someone, whether you're heterosexual or queer, or asexual, whatever it is, you need some sort of connection to another human being. And so this idea that as Black women, and because what it does is it feeds into this strong Black woman trope that I'm systematically trying to destroy in Hollywood. I was like, I hate that shit. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
But that's their favorite conflict, though. When it
yeah.
comes to shows like this, the conflict is either with your relationship or your work.
Mhm.
And it's rare that you have a a character that
Mm-hmm.
has both going well at the same time.
Right.
Right? You can even
Right.
break it down to this show. If Lawrence finally got his job and everything, his
Mm.
relationship had to be messed up. Issa
Mm-hmm.
got her successful event, her relationship had to be messed up.
Mm-hmm.
So, and as soon as they get happy, I even joke that Lawrence is going to lose his job as soon as he gets with Issa, because there's no way they would allow they would allow both things to happen. But I was kind of right, because okay, he got the job, but he's going to lose Issa because Condola's pregnant. So that's,
Right. And he may
and I
not even
just
take the job. He may not even
he
take the job now because Condola's pregnant.
exactly, and it's
Yeah.
just like, I just wish writers either had more freedom or had more imagination to have other kinds of conflicts where, okay,
Mm-hmm.
Issa can have a successful event and she can have a functional love life. I'm not even saying, I don't want to say successful in air quotes, but
Mm-hmm.
functional, where she's,
Yes.
with fun. She could have been just messing with Nathan. It didn't have to be serious or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And she's dealing with that, but then she has a different issue that she's dealing with, the challenges of putting together a second event. Okay, the
Mm-hmm.
easiest thing, not the easiest thing to do, the hardest thing to do after you've done something well is to do it again,
Right.
and just
And
going.
the anxiety that comes with that, like, oh, can I top, like, this was a, because I think the new one that she's doing is like some sort of wellness
Mhm.
expo or something. And that's when Nathan offered, the back half of the barbershop to her. Can we talk about Nathan for a minute? Because I said
Sure.
that when we do this podcast,
Mm.
I am team Nathan. I might be a nation, I might be a nation of one, and that's freaking okay. I do not
Right.
care. Kendrick Sampson, number one, I think he's an absolute cutie pie.
Hmm.
And the thing with Nathan is that I agree with you. I felt like one of the mistakes that Issa did when we're speaking specifically talking about episode 9, after we had the beautiful episode of episode 8, and then we went to 9, and then it was this idea of, well, I'm trying to be with Lawrence, and she basically kind of gave, Sam kind of gave Nathan like sort of like pump your brakes. I'm
Right.
trying to make things go with him, and I was just like, girl, it
Totally
didn't have.
unnecessary.
Yeah, I was
Right.
like, it didn't have to be one or the other. Date them both. Date them both. Because in episode 8, was she not saying, I just want to I realize that I have to create my happiness. I'm paraphrasing here. I can't
Hmm.
wait for things to make me happy. I have to go out and find them. Clearly, Nathan makes you happy. Clearly, Lawrence makes you happy. Why choose? And again, that's
Well,
within these monogamous
right.
confines. It was just like, girl, do you? Because men do it all the time.
Well, she's dealing as a character, she's dealing with the guilt of having cheated before. So
Right.
now she wants to overcompensate by being super duper open and super duper honest and
Mm-hmm.
super duper clear.
Mm-hmm.
And she still could have done that. She could have told Lawrence, "Hey, listen,
Mm-hmm.
I like you. I want to, chill with you and stuff, but you just got out of a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So and you're about to go potentially move away 4 hours away.
Thank
Let's
you.
just keep this what this is right now and not
Light.
worry. Keep this light. Ironically, she should have been more like May from The Photograph, because isn't that what May did
Oh
to
yeah.
Michael?
Yep, she did.
May was like, listen, you
Mm-hmm.
about to go to London. Let's just enjoy this right now and
Mm-hmm.
stay right here,
Stay
and then
right there.
we'll deal with the future down the line.
Yeah.
She could have done that, but I think that the character Issa was still so racked with guilt, and the
Mm-hmm.
fact that he bought a ring and all this other stuff she was feeling bad about, that she's like, I want to make this, if I get a second chance with Lawrence, I'm gonna make this work and go full steam ahead. But it was still too soon. It was
I
way too
agree.
soon. She probably still had clothes at his house. When she went in that bathroom, she probably went to see if Condola had any medicine in the medicine cabinet. She was in there looking for any stray panties or under or bras that were still left over to see how long it's been since she's
Right.
been there, because
It's
that's that's how
true.
breakups are, and they spent all that time. That would have been an interesting thing to happen, because clearly
Mm-hmm.
they were hanging out in his house on
Yeah.
that couch. You trying
Yeah.
to tell me all that time she didn't find none of Condola's clothes in there?
That would have been a
What?
very interesting
A
scene.
stray
Yeah.
earring,
But
you
they just
know?
try to erase her, and I guess tried to save the emotional wallop for the season finale. But
Right,
yeah, the thing
right.
with me is that I really like Nathan. I'm gonna tell you why. Now we know he was introduced in season 3. Okay, So he and Issa, they were the ones that had sex on the carousel, right? That was hot.
Yes.
I was
Hmm.
like, that's on my to-do list. Check. And so, you know what I mean? Like they had great sexual
Nasty ass.
chemistry. I'm just saying. They had great sexual chemistry. And the thing that I really liked about Nathan is that, number one, people forget that he's the one who inspired Issa to come up with the idea for the block party.
Right.
So from get-go, I love that Nathan is team Issa. And I think that is so important in a relationship, whether it's monogamous or whatever, you know, even if it's somebody you're just seeing casual. The person needs to be on the same page as you. You know what I mean? And so you have to have somebody like, it's sort of like syndrome. I'm your number one fan. Yes. The person
Right.
you date should be your number one fan. And Nathan has proven that. So when he disappeared, right? And then he came back in the season finale for number 3, the season finale of season 3. You and I had already suspected that. I was like, his disappearance, that wasn't him being ghosted. That wasn't him ghosting her, because everybody was like, oh, he ghosted Issa. He ain't shit, whatever. And I was like, no, there's more to it than that. I don't think he was being an asshole. I think there's some sort of mental health issue, maybe depression, whatever. And then it's revealed. Well, I mean, Andrew had hinted at it in episode 7 when he told Molly on the trip to Mexico that, because Molly, of course, was trying to trash Nathan again. Now, mind you, you're the one that tried to fuck up Issa's event, and then you still trying to come after Nathan. It was like, no, girl. And then Andrew was like, okay, back up. I happen to know that he had some, emotional issues or mental issues that he had to deal with, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so the way that I feel about Nathan is that it's not to say that people who have mental illness, like, they shouldn't be held accountable or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we find out that it wasn't even depression. He's bipolar, right?
Yeah.
So this is a man, he didn't even know, like, he hadn't been diagnosed before. Now, if you told me that he was somebody who had bipolar for 10 years and by then you know how to control it, like, there's a certain accountability. I know I have this mental issue, and these are the things that I can do if I'm in a relationship or if I'm trying to pursue someone, whatever. But I can't even imagine how he was feeling. Like, I've read about people who have bipolar disorder and the symptoms and what that does to your brain, because people still don't understand that mental illness is not a choice. The same way you don't choose to have diabetes and you don't choose to have cancer, you don't
Right.
choose to have a mental illness. You can't
Right.
control it. Because I saw people online that were like, well, he should have known better. Known better for what? Like, his brain is literally wired differently, right? And your emotions and your brain are connected. So however he was feeling, because I think one of the things is that you're you have the manic, you have the highs, and then you crash. You know what I'm saying? So who's to say when he met Issa, he wasn't in a manic, he wasn't in one of his manic phases, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
having sex on a carousel is pretty damn risky. I'm just saying, you know what I mean? I mean, I applaud them, but who's to say that Issa hadn't met Nathan when he was on the trajectory of one of his manic episodes, right?
Mm.
So halfway while they're dating together, that's when he probably experienced the crash.
Mm.
And so what did he do? He ran to his mother. He went to Houston. He went to some place, because I can't even imagine how terrified he was. Like, why am I acting like this? Why am I feeling like this? He panicked.
Mm.
And I
Right.
think that's any human being, when things, you don't understand what's happening to you, don't understand what's happening to your body or your brain or whatever. So he ran, and then, he revealed to Issa that when he went to Houston, to Texas, he thought it was depression. And then that's where, like, no, you have you're bipolar, right? And since Nathan has come back, because I don't judge you by your past, I'm looking at what you're doing now. Number one, he tried to apologize to Issa. Molly blocked that. And then he tried to approach Issa again, and Issa was like, I need some time, whatever. And he respected that. Let me be clear with that. He respected her boundaries. And then it seems that Issa's the one that went looking for him to try to reactivate this friendship or this relationship, right? So it seems to me that since Nathan has been back, he's still Team Issa. You know what I mean? Like, for me, as far as I'm concerned, he's the freaking MVP for helping Issa land that major act for her block party. He showed up at the block party. And let me point out the fact that Lawrence wasn't fucking there.
Right.
Okay. And that's the thing that people are like Team Issa and Lawrence. And I'm like, but what the fuck is it? Like, but what has he done? Like, well, how has he contributed to Issa's evolution, at least on her career side. I have not seen it. Whereas Nathan is always there. He's cheering her on. The second event, he's already offered his, thing. He was like, you can use here. And I think what was especially beautiful about that is that even when Issa turned him down and said, I'm not interested in a romantic relationship with you, he still offered it to her. You understand what I'm saying? He was just like, all right, we're not going to be romantic, but I believe in you. I don't know. Maybe he might still have some hope in his heart that maybe,
Oh, he got hope. I'm gonna tell
he
you, as
has
a
hope.
man,
Yeah.
he's smart. He's like, listen, I can keep her in the circumference, in the radius. I'm not. I'm a chill. I'm gonna play my position, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
just gonna wait for somebody to fuck up, and that's exactly what's gonna happen in season 5.
Right.
Because his patience may, not to say that Issa's like, a trophy or something, but his patience might be rewarded,
Yes.
and he does have her best interest at heart. So when
Yes.
you truly into somebody, you can wait, and he already knows what he's getting, thanks to the Ferris wheel. So and however, so he's like, listen, I'll wait. You go
Yeah.
do your thing. I'll
Yeah.
be over here cutting hair and doing other stuff. And when the
Yeah.
time is right,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna get you.
Yeah.
He's smart.
Yeah.
So I hope they bring, as far as season 5, I really hope that they keep them that going and help us see where, because to me, he's kind of like the halfway between Daniel and Lawrence, and that is
Mm.
Daniel, he fed that creative side of Issa too in the way that
Mm-hmm.
Lawrence didn't,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Issa's got this rapper music thing that she's, and Lawrence never really embraced that. He kind of said, "Yo, that's cool, that's nice," but he didn't really embrace it. And
At
as a
all.
create, and as a creative person,
Mm-hmm.
there's a big difference between your significant other kind of just clapping for you and actually being involved and being like supportive of what you're doing. You know what I'm saying?
I totally agree with
There's
that.
a difference. Not everybody's built to be super involved because they don't understand exactly what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
but Nathan understood the nuance. Daniel understood the nuance in a way that Lawrence didn't really get her career trajectory. So
Mm-hmm.
I hope that they build on that in season 5.
Yeah. I think because that's the thing is like as two creative people, we understand that like the people that we date or that we're in relationships with, sharing that part of yourself is an important part of the relationship. Listen, you don't need to read every article that I've ever written, but I would just like to. And that was like in Brown Sugar, remember, with
Mm-hmm.
Sanaa Lathan's, with Sydney's character when she was in the basketball play. She was like, well, did you read my article? And he was like, no.
Oh, that's
You know what
the
I mean?
dagger. As a
Mm-mm.
writer, when you ask your lover if they've read your article and they're kind of
Mm-hmm.
like, nah,
Right.
oh, that is like
Yeah.
the worst
Yeah.
feeling
Again,
ever.
you don't need to go to my archives and read every one. But if it was like,
Right.
but it like, let's say we were in bed 2 weeks ago and I was like, oh, babe, you know what? I got this interview with so and it's going to be published. Or if I text you and I'm like, oh, the article's up and there's just like no, like a couple of years ago, I dated this guy, right? And this was around the time when I was doing the Oscar panels, right? The Academy panels. So I
Right.
think I did 3 of them that summer. I did one in August, 2 in July, or whatever. He
Mhm.
went to not one of them,
Oh.
not one.
Mhm.
He was like, what do you do? I think one time I was doing the panel for Black Klansman.
Mhm.
Spike Lee. You have to be under a rock as a Black person not to know who Spike Lee is. Now, whether you like his work or not, that's another whatever.
Right,
I remember
right.
specifically telling him when I got the email from, the New York Academy office where they were like, "Oh, we got you. We're booking you for the." And I was like, on my phone reading the email. I did a little yelp, and I was like, "Yes, I got Spike. I got Black Klansman," especially because I was going to meet John David Washington.
Mhm.
And yeah, he was looking at me. He was like, "Oh, what happened?" And I was like, "Yeah, I got the panel. I'm going to be doing Black Klansman." And he was like, "Oh, that's nice." And just
Oh.
like it was nothing. It was nothing. It was
Oh.
nothing. And I was like, wow. Like, to be honest with you, he had no interest in my career, like as a writer, a podcaster. He listened to not one episode, nothing. He was not interested in the least. And so
Mm.
that was just sort of like, this probably a sign that I mean, we broke up for much different reasons, but I was like,
Right,
that was
right,
usually
right,
a sign.
right.
Whereas, the partner the boyfriend, my boyfriend right now, like he has an alert on my podcast when it comes up. It's on his, you know what I
Oh,
mean? And like today I had an interview with Robbie Amell or whatever, and he was texting. He was like, "So, hey babe, are you ready? Like, do you feel ready?" Like he has a genuine vested interest. You know, and this is he's very busy. He works full time. He goes to school full time, but he will always take time out of his day. Like he'll remember things that I don't even remember. Like, hey, don't you, aren't you supposed to be doing X, Y, and Z today? And I'm like, oh shit, I forgot. But that's all to say that for somebody like Issa, who's creative like us, that means something. And I think
Yep.
with Nathan represents that to me. Somebody who has a genuine interest of you as a person and as a creative. And I'll also say the thing that I love about Nathan is that he has a genuine goodness about him. Because I remember when he was saying how when he opened the barbershop, he wanted to also give free haircuts to people, you know, who couldn't
We're
afford it or who were
unemployed,
homeless.
right?
Yeah, and I like that almost. I was he's such a good person. You know what I mean? And I feel like I think there are people who dislike Nathan for their reasons, right? They could be like, oh, he ghosted her or whatever, and still holding on to that, even though we know why. But I wonder of the
He's
percentage of
not
people.
dramatic. There are some people who live for
Mm-hmm.
drama.
Yes.
And Nathan is somebody they'd get bored with because he's not dramatic. He's not
Mm-hmm.
Lawrence. He's not
Mm-hmm.
Daniel.
Mm-hmm.
He's not bringing. And it explains why he and Andrew get along because
Oh wow.
those two Zen personalities are not about drama. They're like, listen, I don't need this shit.
They
So,
are. That's an excellent. They each serve
mhm,
that purpose in Issa and
yep,
Molly's life. Yep.
yep,
And so I would hope that Issa would learn from Molly's mistake.
yeah,
You know, messed up with Andrew. Okay, girl. But like maybe
right.
I'm hoping that Issa will see the value of who Nathan is and what he brings, because it's ultimately about like what Molly's therapist said to her. You know, does this person bring value into your life? And I personally feel that Nathan does bring a certain value and calmness to Issa. Like you said, he's not I mean, really, the only thing is like he has bipolar, but he doesn't let that define him. And clearly, from the way he has his life together, I'm assuming he's, you know, on his meds. He's you know, on therapy or whatever. And I'm like, so really, what is the reason that y'all don't like Nathan, right? And I just have to wonder of the people that are like anti Nathan, right? Let's call them anti Team Nathan. What percentage of these people don't like him because of the fact that he has a mental illness? Because we do need to talk about the fact that there's a certain stigma in dating people that have mental illnesses, right?
Right.
Oh, I have bipolar. Nope. Bye. You know what I mean? And I think that's one of the reasons why I do want to see Issa and Nathan continue a relationship, because that would really be fast. It would really be cathartic and educational for people to see what a relationship looks like with someone who has mental illness,
Mm.
right? If she continues this relationship with Nathan, like what does it look like? Because unfortunately, depictions of people with mental illnesses, they're usually serial killers wearing their mother's skin, like, you know what I mean? It's like always like it's like, you know, Silence of the Lambs. There's always like these very stigmatized negative portrayals of people who have mental illnesses, whether it's depression or schizophrenia or bipolar. And I would love to see Insecure take the lead in really normalizing this, right? Because even the way they write about the way they write Nathan is like, it's one aspect of him, but it doesn't define who he is.
Yes, I would
Yeah.
love to find out more about what makes Nathan tick in a lot of the ways that I hope they don't make us wait 3 seasons too, because we got what made episode 8 so good for me too was that
Mm,
we really got to see what made Lawrence and Issa work. We never we caught
mm,
that when we started in season 1, we saw their relationship towards the end on the
yeah.
downturn. So we never saw the good part.
Mm-hmm.
We actually got to see what it is they actually see in each other. I
Mm-hmm.
hope that we actually get to see what Issa sees in Nathan beyond him just being there for her.
Yeah.
Because that's gonna get old
It is. And you know,
real
the thing is,
fast.
and that's something you'll learn as a woman, you learn as you get older. That because what happens is sometimes the guys that we see as the good guys who are good men, we're just, oh, he's so boring. Like we put
Mm,
them in the friend zone. And we
mm,
and then sometimes, and I'm not saying all, but some of us, we tend to gravitate to the man that has all the drama, Like, you know that he's not going to be a good partner. You know he's not going to be a good
But
boyfriend.
he bangs me on the Ferris wheel. Let me stop.
You know what I'm saying? And it's just sort of like, but why? And then it's just sort of like, oh, he's boring. He ain't got no, you know what I mean? And it's like, no, like, as when you get older, you'll get to appreciate that. You'll get to appreciate, you know, men who are not bringing all this drama and messiness into, like Lawrence, right? Because now you brought all this fucking messiness to, and that's why I hate episode 10 so much, because I'm like, yo, we had our girl with a major win in episode, the end of episode 8, and now you just everything up. Why like that? But that goes back to your point of writers needing to find different ways to mine drama for female characters that aren't just, you know,
we got a whole Kelly sitting there. We got a whole Kelly sitting there with something to do, with nothing to do for like 3 episodes. That's completely underutilized.
Can we talk about Kelly for a minute? Because I'm pretty sure if Prentice Penny hears this, he's probably gonna cuss me out. But this is something that I've been feeling, and I've been having group chats, offline chats with people, not disclosing who they are. But we know that Kelly is a fan favorite. People love Natasha Rothwell.
Right.
But the feeling is that as much as she presents or brings like this great comic relief, sometimes it does feel like Kelly is used as a punchline, right?
Yes.
Like, yes, we know that she's sexually active, which is a plus, you know, for plus size women. You know, we know that she's not.
But and how long? It's been so long since we've seen Kelly with anything. What was it? The fingering under the table was what, season 2?
Yeah, and then the guy when she pretended to have a British accent, like, it was funny, but it was just like, I would really love to see in season 5. I would love to see, because we know Kelly is successful. Like, she's an accountant. She's very good at what she does. And she's very, very bright. Like, I love professional Kelly. Seeing her office with her glasses, I love that. But I would love to see like a really full-fleshed, complex love story for Kelly in season 5. Well, no, we already know that Natasha Rothwell can write the hell out of a romantic comedy with episode 8. And I was like, could y'all just please bring that same energy over to Kelly? Can
one episode? Just one.
Yeah, I would love Natasha to write an episode for Kelly. Like, I would love to see her fall in love, or even, it doesn't even have to be, you know, a long term, but just somebody just loving on her. You know what I'm saying? And it's not like a sexual, because the thing is, you know, with plus size women and fat women, the idea of them being sexually desired is usually seen as a joke. Right? And so that same love scene that we saw that she wrote so beautifully for Issa and Lawrence, why can't we see Kelly being loved on like that? You know what I'm saying? And I'd be happy to cast her love interest for her. Like, I was like, what's John Boyega doing? Seeing as she was faking that British accent, how cool would it be?
That would be hilarious.
If she actually did. Yeah, or Daniel Kaluuya. What's Daniel Kaluuya doing next season? Like, I have a whole list of like Black actors, Latino actors. You know what I'm saying? I would just really love to see Kelly get her own storyline, because it did feel like for this season, it was sort of like she was like the helper, like taking care of Issa and taking care of Tiffany.
She was literally the nanny.
She was, and I'm like, and I was like, but what? And then, you know, we knew in the end of season 3, she and Tiffany had sort of a fallout, because, you know, Tiffany was just sort of like, well, I'm the one having the baby and you're single or whatever. We never got to see how Tiffany and Kelly resolved their differences. So that must have happened off screen or whatever. But I would just like to see Kelly for self, where she's not worried about Issa, she's not worried about Molly, because she's checking up on all these people, but who's checking up on Kelly?
Exactly.
I don't see anybody doing that. I can't really remember a scene where somebody was like, oh, hey, Kelly, how are you doing? How's your mom? How's your, you know what I mean? And so I think for season 5, I think what could happen, this is me wishing that episodes 9 and 10 did not happen. If the way it ended in season, the end of episode 8, if we had season 5, I would like to see them expand on some characters. I would like to see them expand on Kelly for sure. I don't really like what they did with Condola, because they ended up using her as a plot point, as the evil woman who got almost like she got pregnant on purpose to like break up. You know, because I saw some ridiculous tweets talk about how dare she have him. She didn't, like, how she gonna have this baby? She didn't even want to be. I was like, don't get it twisted. Just because she said she didn't want to get married again doesn't mean she doesn't want to be a mother. Those are two separate things. Condola never said she didn't want to be a mother. She said she didn't want to get married again, right?
Yep.
So it was
There are a
like,
lot of women who make that choice, trust me.
yeah, and so it was almost like people were mad at Condola for choosing to have this baby. I was like, wait a minute, are we not in 2020? Are we not like looking at SCOTUS right now for like right to choose? So how are you mad at her because she actually chose to have the baby? Like, what are you
Yeah,
talking about?
this is
Like,
true.
it was crazy. So
Choice goes both ways.
it goes both ways. And I wish that, because I really love the actress who plays Condola. I think she's beautiful and very talented. And I loved what she brought to this season. She just had this elegance about her. You know what I mean? And I think that's part of the reason why Molly was jealous of her, because I think she kind of was like, oh no, I'm supposed to be Issa's sophisticated friends
Right.
with money. And she, in a way, I felt like she upped Molly in some ways, no shade.
Mm.
And so I had wished, if I could have my way, that they would have given more storyline to Kelly. They would have brought Condola into the fold, so to speak, and kind of flesh out her character. I have nothing against Amanda Seales, but Tiffany's character doesn't really do anything for me. I'm good. I'm just like, you know what I mean? So it would have been like Kelly, Condola, Issa, Molly, you know what I'm saying? And it was like, you know what this kind of reminds me of? Like, I remember when with Girlfriends, because I'm always going back to Girl, because Princess Penny actually worked on Girlfriends. And so the Molly and Issa dynamic has a lot of Joan and Tony energy to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what happened was, when Girlfriends came back for their 7th and 8th season, the actress who played Tony, Jill Marie Jones, she didn't come back. I think because of contractual, they had moved from like the CW, from WB to CW or something like that. Or UPN to CW. That's what happened. So she didn't come back, and so what they did is they brought in Monica. Monica was sort of like the villain of the show. William had dated her. She was like this very sedity, nasty type who didn't like any of the girls. She didn't like Joan. She didn't like Tony or whatever. And so when Tony left, they brought in Monica. You know what I'm saying? And so it was sort of like kind of getting used to her being in that space. But by the time that the show ended, you kind of liked Monica. You know what I mean? They had to make her messy and whatever. But yeah, I was just like, when I think about Girlfriends, I was like, the one of the things that I loved about the show is that you had 4 Black women leads, and they gave equal story time. Each of them were fully developed characters with their own storylines together and apart.
Right.
And I feel like Insecure can do that. It doesn't just have to be the Molly and Issa show.
Right.
And this is not knocking Yvonne Orji or Issa, but I was like, I just can't do another season of Issa and Molly being dysfunctional. I can't. I really can't. I was like, if you bitches gonna make up, then make up and leave me alone. But season 5, please, can we expound on some of these other characters? And who's the other character? The guy, he's Lawrence's friend. He was the one who was sipping the
I
juice.
was just thinking about him too.
Yeah, Neil Brown Jr. I forget what his character's name. He's
Yes. He's
so fun. Yeah,
hilarious.
I feel like in season 5 you can kind of bring
Chad.
yes,
Yes.
like you can bring in like characters, and now that Issa's working, like the assistant who worked with her on the block
Mm-hmm.
party, she's hilarious.
Yeah,
Please
she's
bring
really
her
great.
back. Please bring her
Mm-hmm.
back. So, like you said about mining content, like Issa's work situation could be fun, because people forget that Awkward Black Girl was actually a workplace comedy. The genesis of Insecure was a web series that Issa created, where it was all about the workplace,
True.
right?
True.
She had a crush on a guy at work or whatever. So a lot of the humor came from her crazy ass co-workers, right? So you can do that in season 5 now that she's working with these different clients and doing these different events. You can you can do like these really cool guest cameos, celebrity or otherwise. And you know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's a way that you can expand season 5 where it doesn't just have to be about Molly and Issa's friendship. Like, you can really show like this spectrum of Black womanhood. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's how I'm feeling, but I don't know. I mean, I'm not the showrunner and the creator of Insecure, so what do I know? But I was like, if y'all hire me, I could give y'all some good ideas.
Well, I feel like they've got a blank slate right now. They could really go in any direction they want, because no one that they have there has to stay. Like, they could send Lawrence off to San Francisco just as easily in a stroke of a pen. He's in San Francisco. Condola move there so they could be. I don't know. They'll figure it. He's coming on the weekends to see his kid.
Right.
That could be the way to do the comment thing that you mentioned. He's moved. He's decided to move,
Mm-hmm.
but he comes on the weekends or comes every 2 weeks to see his kid, and maybe one weekend in episode 6,
Mm-hmm.
he needs to catch up. But that's it.
Right.
Keep it
Right.
moving because
And
she's
you
like,
can still show, like, if Lawrence takes the job in San Francisco, what's this new job like? You can kind of do like
right.
some sort of Google type company with some crazy ass coworkers. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot. Listen, we spend as adults, we spend how many hours at work?
Yep.
40, 50, 60 hours. So like our workplace is like our second family. I mean, you may not feel familial towards them, but that's where we spend the majority of our time. You know what I mean? So there's a lot that you can do there, you know what I mean? And find, like you said, conflict in different ways or whatever. And also, I mean, they introduced Issa's mother, who was played by Wendy Raquel Robinson. And I was so happy because for almost 4 seasons, we never saw Issa's parents. And finally, we got to see that. And I would love to see more of that.
Right.
You have her brother, Amal. I love Amal. How about we expand more on that, on Issa's family and and finally meeting her stepfather, the one that, whatever. Like, there's a lot of comedy there, and her stepsisters, and because clearly they're twins and they're weird and stuff. Come on, like, there's a lot of stuff that you can write for Issa that doesn't just have to be about what am I mad about with Molly this week. Like, it doesn't have to be like that.
Right.
So, alrighty. Well, that is all the time we have. Thank you so much, Jerry.
For sure. You helped me get a lot of things off my chest. So
yeah. We had been brewing because Sunday night we were just texting each other and Marco Poloing each other like, oh my god, I can't stand it, I hate it. But you know what it is. It's like, you critique a show. I prefer to do it this way. I didn't want to do it on Twitter because I don't need to like be fighting with people. I said what the hell I said, and you can't edit my damn podcast, so you'll just have to live with it. It is what it is. So
keep us free.
Yeah, you
Power
know what
to
I'm
the
saying?
people.
Yeah. So thank you, listeners. You listened to another episode of the Spectrum Lounge. See you on the other side.